everybody, and welcome to this webinar. We're a couple of minutes early because we thought that if you're early birds like us, and Vicky and I have just been chatting behind the scenes, that it'd be really nice to spend this time, just a couple of minutes before we start, just to find out a little bit more about the people who are attending today. So if you have joined us early, if you also have impatient, double ticked on your observer assessment, which I have from every member of the Belbin team, why not find the comments, I'm not sure where it is on this streaming platform, and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and where you're joining us from. And whilst you're there, please also say hello to Victoria Brown. She's in the background, she is manning the chat today, and will hopefully join us later on as well for when we're answering your questions. So I'm going to see if I can work out this comments bit. Okay, brilliant. Well, Victoria, thank you. You're in the comments. That's superb. If anybody else would like to introduce themselves, I'm just going to see if I can do it actually. Hello. Joe from Cambridge here. Okay. Oh, I can't spell. The simplest of tasks, look. Brilliant. Nilesh, hello, lovely that you're joining us from Finland. How is it going? I hope it's all well. Carol, hi there, you're in Cambridge. It is sunny today. I've had to close the curtains because there's too much glare. I say curtains, I meant blinds. It's still not worked particularly well. Okay, we've got Richard from Thailand. Hello there, it's all coming in too quickly now. John from Lincolnshire, hi there. Hi, Jane from Suffolk. Do you know, I'm originally from Suffolk, Jane. I'm a Lowestoft girl, so I'll always find the Suffolk connection somewhere. Okay, Jane, hi Leah, hi Richard, hi Joe. Live on the Isle of Man, fantastic. Hi Declan, lovely to see you. Nice to see, I love it, Vicky. I think this is what I love, is when you start seeing lots of familiar names and you can picture them in your head, so it's a lovely community. But what I also love is seeing names I don't recognise, and I think brilliant. Welcome to one of our webinars. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can close those comments now, not because I'm not interested, but I do find them very, very distracting. So let's start, it's time. So welcome to this Belbin webinar. My name's Jo Keeler, I'm the Managing Director here at Belbin. And for the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to be looking at how you can use Belbin to form high-performing teams. I'm not doing this by myself, we've got Victoria Brown in the background, and she will be looking after all of the comments. So please do put any questions down, and Vicky will see if she can, well, of course she can answer them, that's a silly thing to say, but she'll either answer them, or if they're good ones, perhaps we'll raise them and discuss them at the end of the webinar as well. So please do say hello to Vicky whilst you're there. And if you do have any questions for her, please do say. We want to keep her busy, want to keep her awake. Right, just going through a bit of the housekeeping. Yes, there is a recording. For those of you who are used to our older style webinars, you knew that I had to wait till we'd edited them and downloaded them and etc, etc. But now we're on this new streaming platform. They get sent automatically. So even if I mess up, you'll be sent the evidence, but that's okay. It's real, it's live, that's what happens. So back to the subject, using Belbin to form high-performing teams. It's quite a big subject, isn't it? Why are we talking about it? Well, we're talking about it, for those who don't know us, we're Belbin, we are the team company, and we have been working with teams for well over 35 years now. And we help teams grow, we help them develop, we help them perform. And we do this using the Belbin methodology, we use this in the Belbin reports, and also from the wealth of experience that we have garnered over the years. We are a small team, but we do have quite a global reach. We have distributors, I think, in about 27 countries. Belbin has been translated into many different languages. And this is because Belbin really is a global language that people can use so that they can understand how to best work together. We're also the team company because we are a team company. We are now an employee ownership trust, which means that the team benefits from all the work that they put in, from all that hard slog and all that dedication at the end of each year, because we are the team the team company. It's a wonderful way of Meredith and Nigel passing on their legacy for the rest of us to carry on for the next few years. Why teams? Why are we talking about teams? I mean, it's a big subject, isn't it, high-performing teams, really? Well, we know that teams are the critical link between strategy and organisational success. We know this, you know this, many other organisations, it's why we're here, isn't it? We know teams are important. Anthony Jay knew this was important back in 1981 when he wrote the foreword for the very first edition of Meredith Belbin's book, Management Teams, Why They Succeed or Fail. He really realised and cottoned on back in the very early 80s that it's not the individual, but it is the team that is the instrument of sustained and enduring success. We also know that teamwork, high-performing teamwork, is hard. There is actually no magic wand. So if you've come here now for 40 minutes to find out what the exact secret ingredients is, we can help a little bit. But actually what you do need to do is give the tools and everything you need for your teams to continue working, to continue becoming high-performing. I'm just reading here because my memory is not so great at the moment. But it does say you've got a large body of research has demonstrated the need for teams. The survey, which I'm sure you're all aware of by EY, they discovered that almost 9 out of 10 companies agree that the problems confronting them are now so complex that teams are essential to provide effective solutions. They also said that an overwhelming majority of respondents think that their organisation's ability to develop and manage teams will be essential for their future competitiveness, are essential to provide effective solutions, essential for their future competitiveness. If that's not a reason to understand more about teamwork and how to put together high-performing teams, I don't know what is. Wherever you look, we see demonstrations of high-performing teams. The question is, of course, is how do we get there? But before we go into that, perhaps we need to start looking at what is a high-performing team. So a high-performing team is a group of skilled individuals who are selected to work together to meet a common objective and share responsibility for outcomes. To be perfectly honest, you could have Googled what is a high-performing team and there would have been so many different definitions out there. I always think that you know when a subject is popular is because Google suddenly gives you over 1 million pages, or at least over 1 million responses to the question that you are asking. It's because people realise, isn't it? They realise that's what we need to be concentrating on. So actually, you could add to this, but this is the definition that we are going to use. It's one that Meredith uses going forward. So it is a group of skilled individuals who are selected to work together to meet a common objective and share responsibilities for outcomes. And there are plenty of things. Again, I mean, there's so many articles written on, there's like an ongoing list about what a high-performing team needs. The shared values, the psychological safety, open communication and collaboration, problem solving, complementary skills, constantly delivering those outstanding results. There are plenty of things that a high-performing team needs. I'd also like to add to this list, actually, a team needs to grow and to learn. You need to have that curated space for the teams to be more than they were at the beginning of a project. I'm sure you can add more. I'm sure you all have another bullet point you'd like to put in there to what a high-performing team needs. But what we're here today is to really look at how do you start to form a high-performing team? What if you had the luxury, which I don't think many of us have, but what if, just you know, let's go here. What if you had the luxury of a blank sheet of paper and you were tasked with forming a high-performing team? Where would you start? There he is, Meredith Belbin. He would always start at the beginning and always check that the team had a clear purpose. What is the team there to achieve? What is it there to do? Just let you know, Meredith is in the office today. He's having problems with his phones at home, so he thought he'd come in and ask us for some help. He's 97 and that's allowed, and I might pop round later. But he's still very much involved in Belbin, and he is the patron of Belbin, the Employee Ownership Trust. Anyway, I digress. Always start with the purpose, because the purpose actually informs the next bit. The purpose actually informs the who, what, where, when, and how, all of this. So make sure that there really is a clear purpose. And all teams are different. So different teams have different reasons for being a team. Some may be there this team is here to evaluate all of the options that have been given to it. This team's purpose is to come up with the ideas because we've got a problem and we need to come up with alternative solutions. There could be a team that's responsible for the implementation of work that's been previously done elsewhere. For those of you who know Belbin, you know where I'm getting to here, is that actually what's needed may differ and it all depends on that purpose. So it's really important that we get that right. Now, we know from the research that was done back at Henley in the 1970s and 80s that we know that actually one thing that a team does need to be able to fill its purpose, regardless of what it is a distribution of different behaviours. We need a diversity of behaviours within the team for the team to be successful. For those of you less familiar with Belbin, over 9 years, over 200 teams, analysing the heck out of them, and that is a technical term, to be able to find out what it was that made teams work well together. So Dr. Meredith Belbin and his team and his boss, his wife, Dr. Eunice Belbin, were involved in going to Henley, which was Henley Management School at the time, because Henley were a bit confused because they had all these teams of top managers working together in syndicates, doing business simulations. And they couldn't work out why some of these teams worked brilliantly and why some of them less so. Because in theory, they all had brilliant managers on them. So in theory, they should have all been really high performing. Henley couldn't come up with a reason why. So they brought in Meredith and his team for the Industrial Training Research Unit based in Cambridge. And over 9 years, they spent analysing, looking at everybody's personalities, their level of intelligence, their values, their motivations, looking at what they were contributing whilst they were playing a particular business exercise. And they had what I suppose would be called the original big data. And they looked at all of this data and they said, right, from here, we must be able to find out what it is that makes some of these teams work really well and some of them not. And after lots of experimentation, after lots of going back to the drawing board, they managed to find out that they needed 9 distinct clusters of behaviour for a team to be successful. Not 9 people, but 9 clusters, which were each called a team role, were needed to facilitate a team's progress. They managed to be able to predict this. So Henley put teams together, they looked at all of the data, and Meredith and his team said this team will come first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And they were able to predict this with over 80% accuracy. It's been used ever since. And again, people come back time and time again because they know that it works. But not 9 people, but 9 behaviours. So the first thing you need to have with a high-performing team is that purpose, and you need representation of each of these 9 team roles. But depending on the purpose, depends on how much of each team role you may need. So going back to the examples, if you have a team whose purpose is to evaluate and look through the ideas of others to go which way forward, you would need a definite contribution within that monitor evaluator area. For those ideas, you may need to make sure that you have those plants, resource investigators. It depends on what the team is there to do. For those of you who aren't so familiar with the terminology of Belbin, I'm just going to whiz around the circle here really quickly, so you get a feel for these 9 clusters. And you can start thinking about where they would be suited when you're working with a team. So we'll start at the top there. We have that pink resource investigator. I know it's really small writing, but don't worry, we're going to send you some information afterwards. And the resource investigator is the one that is always looking under each stone to see where the opportunity lies. They go outside of the organisation because they like to see what's going on, what are other people up to. They're great negotiators. They're never in the office, but they contribute a lot of ideas to the team. It's not that they're just not necessarily their own ideas. They've been found elsewhere and brought in. Now, each of these team roles, each of these clusters has these strengths, but they also have what we called allowable weaknesses. And we say they're allowed because if you're aware of them and you can manage them, it's okay. It's like the flip side of a coin. If a resource investigator is always out looking for opportunities and negotiating and dealing with people, do you know sometimes they may forget to follow up? As long as they're aware of that and they apologise or they put something in place to make sure it doesn't happen all of the time, that's okay. So it's a social role. Next up, we have the team worker, the green team worker. The team worker is one with listening skills, with empathy, and are the ones that make sure that the team works. So the gel that keeps the team together. They're the ones to make sure that everybody feels comfortable to make that contribution. Everybody feels brave enough to do what they need to do. They're wonderful at diffusing tension. Allowable weakness is that perhaps they're a bit indecisive because they don't want to upset anybody, but that's okay. The last of the social roles, so these are all the social roles, is that of a coordinator. And you can see there, they are very much the conductor. They know what the music is meant to sound like, and they can bring everybody in because they recognise and use the talents of the team around them. They're quite laid back. You never see a coordinator sort of flapping because they're quite calm. They're always looking at the overview. Allowable weakness, sometimes they over-delegate and you wonder, what is it that they're actually doing themselves? So there we have the 3 what we call social roles. We also then have 3 doing roles. We have that of the shaper, and the shaper's giving the direction, saying, right, we need to be over here and we need to be over here now. This is where we need to be. They're challenging, they have lots of energy, and they're quite competitive, and they're quite impatient. And this is great because it's the energy that the team needs to get them over the line. Their allowable weakness is that sometimes they can upset people because there is about the task, not about the person. But as long as they can recover that, that's okay. They need to be able to recover from that because otherwise people aren't going to do what they're asked anymore. So yeah, it's that managing that allowable weakness. We then have the completer finisher. The completer finisher is the one who has that internal anxiety because they need everything to be just right. They have attention to detail. They're the ones that wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and say, oh, I just realised that isn't quite right here. So they're always checking and rechecking. You need them, especially at the end of a project. Their allowable weakness is sometimes they can't delegate, and they can't delegate because they know that nobody is going to do as good a job as them. They have such incredibly high standards. We then have the implementer, and the implementer is the one that is very organised, practical, methodical, probably loves Excel and Gantt charts and all of these new things that keep coming up because they like everything to be organised. They organise the work that needs to be done, and they do it because the organisation needs it to be done. They don't do anything for any personal gain. Their allowable weakness is sometimes they can be a little bit inflexible because if a process has followed A, B, C, D for 15 years and you suddenly say you don't need D anymore, that can be a problem, but it's okay as long as it's managed. In fact, get your implementers involved in the change to start with because they'll organise it for you. So we have the social roles, we have the action roles, doing roles, and then the last 3 are what we call the thinking roles. We have the specialist that takes a deep dive into a subject area. He likes to be an expert, again has very high professional standards. You can normally tell a specialist because of the amount of letters they have after their name. They really have a thirst for knowledge. Their allowable weakness is sometimes they only contribute on that quite narrow front, but that's okay, as long as you can get to it for the benefit of the team. The monitor evaluators are the ones that weigh up the pros and the cons. They take the emotion out of the decision-making process and are normally, actually always, right. They're the ones who are able to look dispassionately and say, yes, this is the way we need to go forward. Allowable weakness is they're not always the most inspirational, but that's okay. You're not asking them to be inspirational, you're asking them to be right. And then last but not least, we have the plant. The plant is the one with all the creativity, with the differing ideas, a great problem solver. With the resource investigator coming up with lots of different ideas, but their ideas are very, very frequent. Not all of them are any good, but they are all original ideas. They're ones from using this, perhaps probably sitting by themselves somewhere, coming up with many different ways to do something. Their allowable weaknesses, sometimes they're going so much here, they're not so great at communicating. Again, that's absolutely fine. So there we have the thinking roles. So for those of you not so familiar with Belbin, that was just a very, very, very quick description of each of these 9 behaviours that are critical for a team, a high-performing team, to go forward. But depending on the purpose, it could be that monitor evaluator is more critical for this particular team. So you need to make sure that you know that, because you need to make sure that actually, if that is the case, that you may want 1, 2, 3, or 4 people perhaps to fill that role. You need a very good understudy if that is the case. And there needs to be emphasis on the more critical roles. Okay. So, next slide. So we've got the objective, we've got the why, we've got the what, we know which behaviours we need. So we still haven't talked about people, it's still talking about behaviours. We know which behaviours we need. We know we need to perhaps have an emphasis on some of those behaviours. But then what we need to work out is who actually fits those. Who do you need to fit in those behaviours? And of course, when you're putting together a team, it's actually a mix. That's what you're trying to find. An optimum balance between a functional role, what people do, perhaps their job title, what is it, their input that they're required within the organisation, and their team role. So what we're looking for is a blend of functional roles and team roles that allow the team to be able to face whatever task it's set. So we need to work out the who now. We need to work out who it is that we need to place in each of those particular segments to play that role for the team. And from here, you need data. You need data so that you know not just the functional roles of everybody, but also their Belbin team roles. Remember, we've got the luxury of a blank sheet of paper here, and we're allowed to choose from anybody we like to be able to put together this high-performing team. And this is where our platform Interplace comes into being. So Interplace is the platform that we've used. We're now on the 8th version. We've been using it for 35 years. And it has all of the information that you could need to help you make these decisions, to help you make the decisions of who would be best suited. And it generates these lovely reports. Not only does it generate these lovely reports, and we're going to talk about the reports in a second, it also allows you to use them. So it could be that you have your Interplace platform and you can search for somebody by their team roles. So if you have somebody who perhaps you didn't know they were available, or perhaps just didn't know their strengths, you can say, I'm looking for a high plant. Press the button and it will come up with everybody, and you can say which percentile of plant you wanted, and you're able to search for that. So you really can search for the best people to fill those roles. Obviously, that's a whole nother webinar. I was about to tell you how it worked. You don't need to know that, do you? No, you don't. Okay, so we have the reports and we have the ability to search the reports and find. We have this data that could bamboozle anybody, but actually it's in a really good section. It's a really good way to make sure that it's really user-friendly. So how do you fit everybody within the team? What do you do? Well, it's not a case of people putting up their hands. It's not a case of people saying, please pick me for that role because I'm best at it. Because actually that doesn't work. What we need is proof. We need proof from other people that people have got a strength in a particular area. We see this all the time. People tell us that they've been on a team session and somebody has said, I'm a purple, whatever you want to say, I'm a purple. And my report says that I'm a purple, so therefore I'm going to play the role that a purple needs to play. And the rest of the team are just groaning inwardly because they know actually that that person isn't a purple. But it's difficult to tell them that because they've just filled in a questionnaire and they've been told that they are one. People come sometimes say, I'm a plant, I will be the person who comes up with the ideas. And again, people go, are you though? What we have at Belbin is we need evidence. Why do you need evidence? It's not to call anybody out, it's because the team needs to have the best people playing the roles for the team to meet its objectives. So you want the strongest example of each of these team roles that you can possibly find. So this again is where Belbin comes in, is that we have the self-perception inventory. You fill it out and it tells you where you see your strengths and your weaknesses. But it then tells you to find out what other people think. People that you have worked with, who you trust, you've worked with for at least 3 months. People who understand why they are feeding back. Maybe you're seeing you in a multitude of situations. We call them observers. We ask the individual to complete an observer assessment. And this means that people can find out and they can fill in the assessment saying what team roles they think that they see. What do they see when they work with you? Just a list of words that people have to tick. This then informs the report. It says how you see yourself and how others see you, and then it combines this. This means that you've got a validity check. You've got proof that that person can play the role that you think that they want to play. And it also gives each person within the team a chance to grow, to understand, to reflect. Talk about a growth mindset, understanding how other people see you, and understanding that can help us be so much more. I'll give you a bit of an example. You'll know this if you're Belbin accredited because you'll recognise some of these. So this is a page of John Yellow. John Yellow, this is just John's self-perception, the preferred roles, those manageable roles and those least preferred roles. Very strong resource investigator, very high implementer and shaper. Very little else. So John would have said, I would like to play those roles, please. We then got feedback from other people. And these words that are ticked, some are positive, list A words, some are negative, associated weakness words, and this is list B. And we can see actually that the observers have identified, yes, they've seen the same 3 top team roles, but actually they're seeing quite a lot of negative of one of those. This is something that perhaps that we need to look in further. So we can compare that data. How much does John see? How much do the combined observers see? And there is some similarity, there definitely is, but it's not exact. The observers aren't seeing as much resource investigator as John thinks that they have, or the implementer. The others are okay, they're not seeing much of those, but perhaps in a slightly different order. And then we can take it even a step further and look at the words that were ticked by those observers to see if John's going to be a really good fit in this role. And here we have words such as unspoken, confrontational, competitive, outgoing, methodical, impatient. This is my report, I'm wondering, it's not. But we have all of these words here, and again, it's informing. It's giving you evidence as to whether or not John would be best suited for the role within that team, or whether or not John is better suited to play his strengths in another team. Who knows? But what the reports does give you is data that allows you to choose the best people for the roles for the team to meet their objectives. It really is needed. That validity check is so important because again, it's not about you. It's not about behaviours. It's not about personalities just sitting around a table. It's about the best person to be able to undertake each part of what the team needs them to do. So we need to find out a bit more about them. So we've got the why, we've got the who and the what. We need to know the when. And this is really important because not all team roles are needed at all times. We don't need a team of 9 people. We probably need a team of 4, 5 or 6 with people playing multiple roles depending on when they are required. And it's so important that this happens. We worked with an organisation in London, a creative agency, and they came to us because they had project teams. from delivering creatives to their customer. And they were finding that it was taking forever to get to the end point. And it was only once they realised that everybody was involved in everything that that's what the problem was. In very loose terms, they were looking at, so what is the progress of what it is that our team needs to do? Well, we need to come up with the ideas, we need to evaluate them, we need to implement them, we need to complete and deliver them. That's all they needed to do. But what they found at the ideas stage was okay, lots of plants, lots of resource investigator behaviours working there. But then they found that those plants and resource investigator behaviours were also making an appearance during the evaluation, the implementation, and also the completion stage of the project, which meant that the phrase which was heard so much was, actually, I'll come up with a better idea. So back they'd go again to the beginning of the project, and it was driving everybody mad. So they realised that actually if they could just keep those two behaviours there at the beginning, those at the idea stage, and then asking the behaviours, we don't need you anymore unless we call upon you. It doesn't mean you're saying that person has to go, you just ask them to take off those particular hats because they will have other behaviours that they can contribute to that team. They then wanted that monitor evaluator behaviour to check which idea that they were going with. But they then wanted the implementer and the completer finisher towards the implementation and the completion stage to make sure that everything was done, it was processed, it was to a high standard, there were no mistakes. And then what they liked is having a coordinator overseeing the project, along with the specialist who had a great deal of depth of knowledge in that area. And then the shaper and team worker behaviours were called on as and when the team required them to be there. So if everybody was enjoying themselves a bit too much, they got the shaper. Whereas if perhaps there's a bit too much tension, they got the team worker involved. So it's very, very important that we understand not just the who, the why, but the when everybody needs to be involved. They're not all needed at the same time. Now, to be able to do all this, everybody in the team needs to communicate. Everybody needs to work well together. You need lots of twosomes within a team. You need to understand how you're going to work together. And you need to communicate. You need to be able to communicate how you best work. Because it's no good everybody understanding that they know their role that they have to play. They need to know who those other people are around them as well. Because they don't want to just go, yeah, I've done my bit, now I'm off. And just leave everybody to it. You need to be able to say, right, that's my contribution. I think to my best of my ability made, I now need to go and find that strong shaper, and I know that that's Joe. Joe, this is the handover, this is what we're going to do. So it's really understanding and having that communication piece and making sure that the people within the team combine well. We have a good exercise here, actually, which we use, which I'm going to share with you. Obviously, if you're accredited, this will be one that you are familiar with. And what we want to make sure is that people understand to start with their own behaviours. They've got their Belbin report with their observers, okay? They have an understanding of the Belbin language and the strengths that they need to play. We then invite them to sit down with one other member of the team and spend 2 minutes without being interrupted, being listened to with an appreciative ear, 2 minutes to explain how they work best. And then once they've done that, the other person feeds back. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's interesting. Then people swap. And once they're swapped and they've been able to describe how they work best, the strengths that they have, what the team needs them to give, is that they can then have the conversation of how will we then work together? How can we make the most out of the contributions that each of us needs to make? You do this on a twosome basis, you then make sure that that is duplicated around the team. It can be over a coffee break, it doesn't have to be within a formal setting of a team, away day or workshop. It's always making sure that you understand your contribution, the contribution of others, and how you're expected to work together. We have some reports there, we have the working relationship reports that really do help. Again, a familiar sign. What we need to be able to do is share the strengths. Now, I'm going to very high-tech. Gosh, that was noisy, wasn't it? I do apologise for that. It's that way. And then I'm just going to see if I can come to here so you can see me. Okay, it might be a bit blurred. But the other way you can make sure that people understand is get them to share their top 2 team roles. So perhaps we had Richard here, and Richard would be a strong shaper, completer, finisher. Perhaps Joe here is a coordinator and a resource investigator. JC, we can have over here. Perhaps Chris is there. Liv can be here. What we need people to understand is where the strengths are and which ones they need to play. Now, if you don't have the luxury of a blank sheet of paper, if you don't have the luxury of forming a high-performing team from scratch, what you need to do is work out what you do have. And then you need to work out where the gaps are and where the overlaps are. And this is where you have a great starting conversation with your team. And this is where virtually every team workshop that we run, it really starts here. It's understanding between Richard and Chris, who are both on that completer finisher. Who is it who plays it the best? Look at your report. Who is the strongest example of a completer finisher? Because I think actually, Chris, we may need your specialist over here because there's nothing else here at the moment. So it's using this for the team to communicate and understand the strengths that they need to play, but also what the team needs them to play. This is a great starting point for that conversation. It's also a great starting point for the conversation we spoke about earlier, about the team growing and learning and becoming more than they were than at the beginning. Imagine it's critical that we had a plant within this team, but for some reason there wasn't a plant available to you. What would you do? Would you shrug your shoulders? Would you say it doesn't matter? Or would you find out within the people that you do have in your team, who plays plant, who's got the highest percentile, who plays it best? And it could be that it's Liv. And so the decision would be with the team is, Liv, we need you to play the plant role. But instead of saying we're asking you to play the plant role and then all clearing off and expecting Liv to understand how to play the plant role, it's up to the team to help and support Liv in playing that role the best that she can. Why? Because the team, you, everybody else needs her to, because the team needs to hit its objective, its purpose. So what we need to do then is support Liv. What do we need to do to help you play that role? Acknowledgement that you're doing something that perhaps isn't natural style. Perhaps you've got 2 or 3 other roles which are higher than plant. Appreciate the fact that there is going to be a sacrifice made by Liv. It's really important that we get these conversations going. It's important that everybody understands the contributions that they need to make. Right, so put that there. Oh, I love it. It's so technical, isn't it? Okay, there we go. You can also just use the team reports. It's a lot easier than having a flip chart with you at all times. This is a team report that puts all of that data together to allow you to do that. We need to make sure that the team is dynamically engaged with one another. I'm just going to stay here, actually, Vicky. A lot of these quotes are from Team Roles at Work, which you wrote, didn't you, the 3rd edition, alongside Meredith Belbin. Just say we do have an author in the chat as well. So we really do want people who understand the parts that they need to play. And the word is dynamically engaged with one another. You haven't always got the same relationship. It can change depending on what it is that the team needs you to do. Okay, where are we up to now? Yes. The why, the who, the when, and the learning. It's the learning that is just so, so important. I always think of it in the way of wearing a t-shirt. And sometimes we feel that we're wearing the t-shirt of that team role, and that's it. We're just going to play that contribution, job done. Well, it's not like that. You need it to be dynamic. You need the team. You need to play many different roles, perhaps, depending on what the team needs. So you're not always going to be able to play that role. Sometimes you have to take the t-shirt off and put another one on. Sometimes you can have to take that t-shirt off and give it to somebody else because they look so much better in it than you do. So it's making sure that you are playing the role that the team needs you to do. We can look at the team here again. We're looking at averages. This is the team report, and we can find out from our high-performing team what is the overall. What is the culture of this team in terms of its behaviour? Here we have a team which is very implementer and completer finisher, monitor evaluator focused, less resource investigator, coordinator, plant. What does that mean? Is that okay? Is that fitting with that purpose right at the very beginning? Do we have the emphasis on the right team roles? Because if this team was put together and the emphasis was meant to be on ideas, on resource investigator, on plant, then perhaps it's not. But if it was for the planning bit, brilliant. So you can see how you can look there. Have you got the right people? And for a high-performing team, what we really do need is each of the people who know what role they're playing it to the best of their abilities. We've spoken about this before. You really do want them to be what we call a strong example of type. So here we have the average for the team, and then we can see that this is a particularly good team, tree team of 7, because they have somebody over the 80th percentile, which is that high, strong example of a team role, for each of the team roles, with the exception of coordinator. Perhaps the team needs to help somebody become a strong example of a coordinator, because perhaps the team needs it. Whew. So let's have an overview. The objective. What is the team needed to do? Which team roles are needed? We know we need all 9, but sometimes we need to have an emphasis on some more than others. Who would best take on each team role? And ensure that everybody understands the roles that the team needs them to play. And they know the roles of everybody else. Everybody needs to understand. And then the high-performing team needs to learn, grow, and support each member to play the role that the team needs. So here we have high-performing teams in 40 minutes. It is a complex area and it is blinking hard work, because we have to be constantly on this. It's a bugbear of mine that people feel that they've had a team workshop or they've done a team day, they've ticked the box and they're done now, they're high performing. No, the team workshop is just the beginning, and you need to keep going over it again and again. People need to understand where they're flexing, where they're changing, what's needed, what support do other people need, has the purpose changed? Teams are dynamic, they are responsive to so many things. So for teams, frequent and regular work is needed. And this is where understanding Belbin can help, because it gives everybody that common language. I'm just going to share with you that we've just heard from a customer actually that we've been working with. And they've been using Belbin for many years, and they used it in a particular area of the organisation. And what was great is that they decided to find some metrics to be able to measure the effectiveness of their teams. And so they chose 7 teams that were relatively underperforming in this particular area. And they looked to see what was it about these teams. And they found actually they didn't have all of these team roles present. People had very confused profiles. They didn't really know how people were contributing. Their observer feedback wasn't coherent. There wasn't a real understanding of what people were bringing to the team. And there was quite a low number of strong examples, so people who were brilliant in each role. They ran 4 or 5 different workshops, and they've just got the data in. And unfortunately, I can't share the company with you, but I'm sure I will be able to at some point in the future. And they have now gone from the bottom sales performing teams to actually, they're all in the top half of the organisation. And they now have representation of those team roles. They now have strong examples, and their reports are now far more coherent. People understand what it is that they need to deliver and what people are seeing, so they've developed over time. It's been taken a while to get there, but it really has. We've found some really, really strong examples of how using Belbin can help within organisations. We'd love to help you. We would love to help you, not necessarily by running workshops. We would love you to be accredited, to find out more about Belbin, the reports, and how you can use it, so that you can replicate this. So you can be the ones putting the teams together and helping them, holding their hand, and helping them with regular work to become the best teams they possibly can be. So thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. Vicky, do we have any particular questions or any you'd like to share? Oh, there you are. Excellent.
Absolutely, yeah. We're just having an interesting discussion in the chat about where you might have conflict between 2 people. and the value of them observing one another. And I was just saying that within Interplace, which is the whole kind of system, Kate, that does the analysis work, from taking the survey responses and producing the report, Interplace does cater for that. So I think in that case, it might be useful to see whether there are team role opposites at work, whether there's sort of an overlap of roles. And it's not necessarily just between two people. It can be used to diagnose all kinds of problems which could be affecting team performance.
It's that being able to predict performance, isn't it, and predict where the potential conflict could be. This is really useful stuff. We know that some team roles are so different that it's not that there's conflict, and we always say conflict, it's not that there's fighting going on, it's just that people are seeing things from different perspectives and not quite able to gel and work together. Understanding that using the Belbin language and understanding it's our behaviour, it's not actually us, is really powerful stuff. So yeah, we've got some reports that can really help you with that. And also the understanding what we call team role opposites. They often say, actually, we enjoy working with people we are most similar to, but we're most productive when we're working with people who are very different to us. But that requires some work, doesn't it, in getting that relationship just right.
That's it. We had another question earlier from John, which was when you were talking about balancing functional roles with team roles. So he was asking, to what extent do management teams need to fulfill all the team roles, and can certain functions be delegated to non-management staff? I guess there's a little bit of sort of maybe confusion there between function and behaviour. But I don't know if you wanted to talk specifically about management teams in that context.
Do you know, that's really interesting, isn't it? Because when you're talking about high-performing teams, I'll go back on that one a minute. So when you're looking at senior leadership teams, they often are the function heads, aren't they? They are often people who are together because they are the head of each of those particular functions. So they're chosen just for their functional roles. And it's difficult sometimes because within organisations, if there's a strong culture, you can find that the people who have risen to the top to become heads of different departments have all got similar behavioural styles. And so what we do find is that it's difficult because you've almost got quite a homogenous sort of team role distribution there. There can be, sometimes you find very distinctive shaper cultures at that level, or any of those team roles actually, because that's what's got them there. It's difficult, therefore, to be able to say we also need to look at team roles because they have to be there due to their function. It's interesting, Meredith talks about this, I think it's in team roles at work. And he said one way of doing this, because you can't change people if they have to be there, they have to be there, is that if you're aware of this, what you can have is sub-teams, and you can delegate, go, oh, actually, I think we need to do that, give that to a think tank, or I think we need to give that to another team, just to be able to check it over again before we present it back. And so what you can do is, if it's critical, and perhaps there aren't the team or distributions within that team, you could almost subcontract that out to a team that you do have some say in, who is a balanced team, who does have all of the team roles, which is then fed back to that senior leadership team. It's not, I think I said at the beginning, this isn't easy. This is really quite tough. And we've got politics to play. I have to be in this team because it says that I have to be in. Using the language of Belbin does help, because it says, no, we know you're the head of, we know that you're this, we know that you're the other, but right now we're just looking for plant contributions. It does help people to understand why they're not necessarily invited to the party. I don't think I've answered your question, Vicky.
No, I think that did. I'm going to say so. There's lots more here, Joe. I don't know if you want me to carry on.
Yeah, there's a couple more, that'd be great.
Yeah, okay. So Lynn's asking about redoing the SPI. Obviously, we've talked about project teams, we've talked about people coming in and out of teams, and I guess something we say is that when things change and when people are they've maybe moved functional role, they're doing something different, or they're with a different group of people, that it's worth looking again at the self-perception and getting, or at least getting a new observer assessment to reflect that.
Oh, absolutely, because Belbin measures behaviour. This isn't personality. This isn't something which is relatively fixed. And our behaviour changes depending on our experiences of teams that we've worked with, managers we've worked with, cultures that we've worked with. So we expect our behaviour to change. Also, think about this. If you were asked to play a role that wasn't naturally coming to you, perhaps you had to play a role which you wouldn't normally, and it worked brilliantly, well, perhaps you would like to redo your SPI and get observer assessments along the line to reflect that. We constantly change and evolve. We constantly, well, if you have a growth mindset, we do, and to make sure that we are fulfilling the role that we are in the workplace. So let's redo our Belbin and SPI and observers to reflect that.
Fantastic. And then one more thing which just occurred to me that we haven't sort of spoken about a great deal is when we declare a team role void, because I think Meredith has some really interesting things to say about this, that actually there's a moment of reflection, isn't there? It's not just that we scramble to put someone in that role, but we actually have to acknowledge in the team, as you were saying, you kind of touched on team role sacrifice, that it's important that we say this person might not be really comfortable in this role. They're kind of doing it for the benefit of the team, but actually that we take that time to acknowledge that that's the dynamic.
So important. It really is. And I just lost my train of thought then. Yes, there's also useful to take a pause when there is a void, because it could be that somebody does have it, but they're not so willing to put their hand up. There's a wonderful section within management teams about what makes a good team member. Perhaps we ought to explore that at another webinar. And a good team member will make sure that they don't always jump in and say, I can do this. It's not always say, don't worry, I'll sort it out. A good team member is actually one that sits back, because allowing other people to fill the void, and it just could be that people don't feel that they are confident enough to do so. So it's giving them space to be able to raise their hand.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just to reiterate, because we're talking about performance, and I think you've touched on this, Joe, is that this is something that you can look at and measure. And if you were mentioning this client who's been able to do that so well, and that it's so important that we just go beyond the idea of just balancing teams, but that we look at strength of role, we look at helping people grow in a particular role, so that we really see that return on investment, we see those gains in performance that we know that Belbin is capable of delivering.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. We've run out of time. Whether or not we've run out of questions, I do not know. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Vicky, thank you as always. We'll be doing another webinar together soon. This is automatically now going to appear in your inbox. So please do watch it again if you need it. If you have any questions, please just drop us a line at team@belbin.com, or if you're linked in with us, do that. However you want to get in touch, you could just phone us, because we will answer. So please get in contact if you've got any questions, and we would love to help putting together your high-performing teams. Because nobody's perfect, but a team can be. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you all again soon. Many thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.